Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to my spoiler-free review of Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, Ant-Man and the Wasp is the newest MCU movie, and it's actually set before the events of Infinity War and after the events of Civil War. So, it's not exactly post-Infinity War. So, before I jump into my review, I just want to point out that for those of you that haven't seen Infinity War, which is probably a really small amount of you, you don't really have to worry. You're not going to miss almost anything if you haven't seen Infinity War. You'll still be able to understand what's happening if you've seen Civil War. If you haven't seen Civil War, then you're probably going to be confused. At this point, I think everybody's seen both those movies. So I gotta say, Ant-Man was one of those characters. When I first heard that he was getting a movie, I wasn't quite sure how that would pan out because I didn't know a whole lot about this character. He's one of the few characters whose comics I haven't read like ever. I knew there was a character called Ant-Man that he was part of the Avengers, and that's pretty much it. And had a really general backstory kind of idea. Now, Ant-Man is definitely one of my favorite MCU characters that's been in film. And it's one of those characters that I fondly look forward to every time they get like a new movie, or every time he has some kind of appearance in any other kind of ensemble kind of film. And Ant-Man and the Wasp is definitely an entertaining time. I had a blast with this movie. It's one of those few movies where I would say that the humor actually works, because one of the biggest problems with Marvel, in my opinion, is that Marvel movies always get overpopulated and oversaturated with all this humor as a way to kind of compensate for lack of plot and lack of villains, and they start throwing all this humor around and make the movie funny, so we kind of just let everything else slide. The thing with Ant-Man is that the humor isn't forced in any way. It's all feels really natural and very organic, and a lot of that has to do with all the performances around the whole movie. Mostly has to do with Paul Rudd and Michael Pena, and then the rest of the whole cast. And this movie's just an absolute blast. I think the best part of this movie would probably be Evangeline Lilly's characters that they introduced. Even though the movie's called Ant-Man and the Wasp, I feel like you could easily just swap those two around. So it'd be the Wasp and the Ant-Man. I think that title works a little bit better in my opinion, just because the movie's more focused around Wasp and her story, and that's pretty much the entirety of the film. And then Paul Rudd's there and he's helping them out, and he's still a key part of it, but it's mostly focused around the Wasp. And I thought she absolutely stole the show. She had some amazing action sequences, and she provided a little bit of humor, but it was mostly the action sequences and just the narrative that focused around her that made the film interesting. But even with that said, Paul Rudd was still a good part of this film, and I still had a blast seeing him on screen. And he did provide a lot of really good humor, and it was really well timed, and I actually had some good laughs out of this film. The one place where I'll say that the movie does suffer is probably in the narrative and pacing department. Compared to the first film, it feels like there's something missing in the narrative. They focus on a lot of different things in this movie, and they're trying to kind of tying everything together, especially with the villain Ghost. I thought she was great, but they explain her backstory, and then they explain a few other things, and then it begs a lot of questions that are kind of just never answered. We kind of just have to go with the flow, and that might bother some people. It bothered me a little bit, not a whole lot, but it might bother other people a lot more, for those maybe who aren't as familiar with these characters or haven't read the comics, which is majority of the people that watch these movies. So I think that's one of the areas where the movie kind of felt a little off, is the narrative department. Another part would be, since this movie's focusing on the Wasp, Paul Rudd kind of takes a backseat, because if you guys remember in the first movie, he had all of these like burglary skills, and then all these like parkour skills, and all these extra skills that added layers to Paul Rudd's character for Scott Lang. And this movie didn't touch on any of that. I kind of understand why they did that. It probably has to do mostly with giving Hope's character just more time to shine, giving her a reason to really just take the spotlight. So I wouldn't say that was necessarily like lazy writing or anything, that they just decided not to give Paul Rudd the skill set in this film. But That's something that I think was visibly missing. I would have at least liked to see a little bit of that, of his previous skills come into play, not completely just disregard it altogether. And then the other part would probably be the pacing. The pacing is okay for this film. It starts off slow and then it gets fast real quick, and then just stays at that pace throughout. And then by the time you know, the movie's just over. And I feel like the movie could have benefited if it slowed down, even if it was just like an extra like 10 minutes. If the movie just slowed down an extra 10 minutes, I think the movie would have been a little bit easier to digest because everything kind of just happened real quick. But overall, guys, Ant-Man and the Wasp is a good sequel. It's definitely worth a watch, especially if you enjoyed the first film. You're definitely going to have a blast with this film, despite its visible flaws. Overall, I give Ant-Man and the Wasp an 8 out of 10. But that's all I've got for you guys. Just my quick spoiler-free review of Ant-Man and the Wasp. So let me know what you guys think about this film. Have you seen it? Have you not seen it? For those of you that have seen it, what are your thoughts on it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? How would you say it compares to the first film? And how would you say it compares as a superhero sequel in general? I want to know your guys' thoughts down in the comments down below when you get a chance. And if you enjoyed the video, then smack that like button, as always appreciated. And if you want to see more content like this, then subscribe to see more. I'll see you guys next time.